Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda Muniz, and I am a case manager in the Municipal Stormwater Permitting Unit, and I am part of the team updating the Highway Agency general permit for off, and then about halfway through, I'll hand things over to Louisa Lubiak. We will be recording the session, and we'll post the recording along with the slides on our MS4 webpage, where you'll also find the pre-draft permit. Please review it and share it with others in your stormwater program if you'd like. As Dan mentioned before, in today's session, we welcome you to send questions in the chat, and we will either address them along the way or at the end during a Q&A session. If you think of anything after the session, we'll be sharing contact information at the end of the presentation, so just send us an email. Today, we will provide an overview of the permit renewal timelines leading up to the effective date of January 1st, 2025. We'll discuss the proposed conditions, focusing on those that are new or modified from the 2020 permit. We'll follow that with a quick summary of the items that need to be submitted to DEP and wrap up with a Q&A session. The department started the permit renewal process several months ago. We considered suggestions from stakeholder sessions that were held over the past few years regarding amendments to the stormwater management rules, as well as comments from the EPA. Some changes you'll see are clarifications, some are modifications, and some are new requirements that are in line with enhancements that were made to the Tier A permit renewal in January 2023 and the public complex permit renewal this past January. Many of these enhancements were made to address water quality problems, such as impairments and total maximum daily loads, or TMDLs, that affect the waters throughout the state. You can compare the current Highway Agency permit to the conditions proposed in the pre-draft to familiarize yourself with these changes. If you have questions or concerns, please let us know. We will evaluate any feedback we receive after this outreach presentation and will incorporate what we can into the draft permit, with consideration to the stormwater management rules, other MS4 permits, and EPA guidance. Keep in mind that this time between the pre-draft and the draft permit is not a formal comment period, so we will not post an official response to comments. Our goal is to issue the draft permit in August, which opens the formal comment period at that time. After the comment period is closed, we will evaluate those comments, incorporate what we can into the final permit, and prepare a formal response to comments document. Our target is to issue the final permit in November with an effective date of January 1st, 2025. We will also review all the other related materials such as templates and website language and update them as needed to reflect the final permit conditions. Let's get started on the permit conditions. As we go, you'll see as the permit citations up in the title boxes, so you can see exactly where in the permit to find the full text. Due dates are noted on the slides, referencing the effective date of permit authorization, or EDPA, which we are targeting to be January 1st, 2025. You will find that there are some things you will need to implement right away and other things that have time allotted for permittees to plan before implementing. First up is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, or SP3. This is a carryover requirement that has been modified for clarity. If you don't have one now, you will need to create one. It must be reviewed every year, updated as needed, then referenced during any annual staff training. Conditions that end up in the final 2025 permit need to be included in your SP3, so the one you used for the 2020 permit will no longer be a good model. The SPPP is where you will describe the unique details of how your highway agency is meeting the conditions in the permit. It should be thorough enough for someone to pick up and have a pretty good idea of how to carry out operations. Permittees will have 6 months to update their current SP3 and reflect any new permit conditions. The department will be updating the template to work from, which you are not required to use, but will guarantee you cover every permit condition. Our template will be available as a fillable PDF, as well as a Word document on the MS4 webpage. Once it's complete, it needs to be posted on your webpage, discussed during annual training of staff, and submitted to the department using the Stormwater Document Submittal Service through NJDEP Online by January 1st, 2025. This is something all permittees have been required to do from the beginning of the MS4 program. It's simple. To comply with state and local laws regarding public notice, there are certain permit-related actions that must be announced in a way that lets your community know when important stormwater decisions are being made. Public notices are typically done by posted newspapers, social media, and permittee websites. You may also choose to send a direct email to distribute information. Currently, this requirement is to make sure that key stormwater materials were posted somewhere on your website. The modification in the new permit will be that these materials now need to be posted on a dedicated stormwater webpage where the public can find all stormwater materials in one place. If your facility does not have its own website, contact your MS4 case manager to determine an alternate website to post your materials. We have prepared an easy-to-fill template for your webpage administrator to use, and we have staff in-house to provide one-on-one assistance for anyone that needs help. You will need to post your updated stormwater pollution prevention plan, regulatory mechanisms, stormwater infrastructure map, and information related to the watershed improvement plan, such as meeting dates and reports. We will talk about this topic more as we go on today. This permit condition has been modified from the 2020 permit. Previously, only permittees who operate rest or service areas were required to implement a local public education and outreach program and earn a total of at least 5 points each year. The proposed change to this condition will now require all permittees to accumulate a minimum of 7 points each year by completing at least 3 different activities. Additionally, one activity must educate businesses and the general public on the hazards of illicit connections and improper disposal of waste. The point system for education and outreach is found in Permit Attachment A and lists various activities, some carried over from the previous permit and some new, with a brief description and their associated point values. You will need to keep records of your activities and report them into your annual report like always. If you need ideas or materials, we have some outreach materials on the MS4 webpage for guidance. This condition is a carryover from previous permit iterations. It's the requirement to get a 5G3 or an individual industrial stormwater permit before starting construction activities that disturb more than 1 acre of land or are part of a common plan of development that disturbs more than 1 acre of land. The 5G3 Master General Permit was renewed in 2022 with some minor changes, and it's available through the link on the slide. Here are some highlights of the changes to Attachment A, the point system for public outreach and for public education and outreach activities. First, we removed the option to get points for having a stormwater website, as this is now a permit requirement. All other previous activities had been carried over and modified for clarity. We also added a series of new activities for points, such as promotional item giveaway, designated pet relief areas, regulatory mechanism signage, regulatory mechanism education, storm drain labeling campaign, a litter cleanup campaign, report access road salt pile program, and a road salt education campaign. You can find a description of each activity as well as their associated point values in Attachment A in the pre-draft document. This condition is another one that permittees have been required to follow, as it highlights the requirements related to stormwater management designs for major development projects. Engineers who review and approve major development projects must ensure the project design complies with the stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8 and the department's BMP manual, and then constructed according to the approved plans. The engineers who review and approve these projects should be different from the engineers who design the projects. If the stormwater program coordinator for the highway agency is not the engineer, the SPC needs to be familiar with the condition and make sure the engineer is following the requirements. Reviewers must attend the department's Stormwater Management Design Review, or SWMDR training, every 5 years to stay certified. We'll talk more about this when we get to the training section. If there are any amendments to the stormwater management rules that the department determines a significant change that warrants training, the SPC will get an email notice from the DEP. The SPC needs to make sure that the reviewers are certified. There is a list of department certified engineers posted on our webpage, so you can see who has taken the course and when their certification will need to be renewed. In this permit, we included proposed stormwater management rule amendments from the New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threats, or NJPACT initiative. These rule amendments are to be adopted and become effective by fall 2025 after the highway agency permit goes into effect. Thus, the changes are being proactively added to the permit. Requirements added to the proposed NJPACT amendments to the stormwater management rules are the addition of requirements from 7:8-1.6D, which specify which iteration of the stormwater management rules are applicable to a major development for any public roadway project that has determined a preferred alternative or reached an equivalent milestone. Updating this permit requirements to match 7:8-5.10, which allows the department to grant a variance from the design and the performance standards of 7:8-5.3 through 5.6, assuming the conditions at 7:8-5.10 are met, and to demonstrate compliance with the groundwater recharge, stormwater runoff quantity, and stormwater runoff quality requirements of the rule. Submit a certification stating that an analysis was conducted in conformance with NJAC 7:8-5.3J. The regulatory mechanisms listed on the slide have been required in the past permit cycle. The one new change is that pets, aside from service animals, may now be prohibited from highway agency properties. These regulatory mechanisms are aimed at minimizing stormwater pollution and flooding throughout the community, not just at major development sites. The purpose of having regulatory mechanisms in place is to keep pollutants out of the stormwater and to prevent them from making their way into streams, lakes, and other water bodies, where they can contribute to harmful algae blooms, or HABs, cause beach closings, and add to other negative impacts. Regulatory mechanisms help to keep the community clean by setting a standard for the public and ensure you have a way to penalize those who violate those standards. Let's go through each one briefly. One is pet waste. The intent is to get people to clean up after their pets, so their waste stays out of the stormwater system and ultimately out of the watershed. The highway agencies can also use this ordinance to completely prohibit pets from being allowed on highway agency property. Two is wildlife feeding. The intent is to stop people from feeding wildlife like ducks and geese, for example, to discourage them from gathering where they can leave droppings on public property that also pollute the watershed. Three is litter control. The intent is to keep trash, including solids, floatables, and residual pollutants from contaminating stormwater and causing flooding due to debris clogging the MS4. You can either enforce your own regulatory mechanism here or enforce the state litter statute to meet this requirement. And four is improper disposal of waste. The intent is to stop people from purposefully dumping waste into the storm system, for example, dumping grease, paint, motor oil, or other hazardous waste. This is a good new housekeeping requirement that has been modified for clarity from the existing permit. It is intended to prevent illicit connections to your MS4 system. This means that no one can discharge into your storm drains. For example, hooking a sanitary wastewater pipe from a home sewer or business into the storm drain system on your property. Illicit connections often show as illicit discharges at your outfalls, so you will be required to inspect outfalls and eliminate any observed illicit discharges. We will get more into detail about this later. This condition was carried over from a previous permit iteration. You must develop a litter pickup program that includes roadside cleanup of trash and debris and regular collection of refuse from litter and recycling receptacles, including those located at rest areas, and maintain records of roadside cleanups and estimates of the total amount of trash and debris collected. There is no change to this condition from previous permit iterations. The permit requires quarterly street sweeping, which the permittee shall sweep at a minimum of once every 3 months or more frequently as necessary to eliminate recurring problems. All segments of limited access highways, including ramps and parking areas that are owned or operated by the permittee and have storm drain inlets or discharge directly to surface water. Triannual street sweeping. The permittee shall sweep at a minimum of once every 4 months or more frequently as necessary to eliminate recurring problems. All segments of streets, ramps, and parking areas that are owned or operated by the permittee and have storm drain inlets or discharge directly to surface water but are not limit access highways. An annual street sweeping, where the permittee shall sweep at a minimum of once per year or more frequently as necessary to eliminate reoccurring problems. All segments of streets, ramps, and parking areas that are owned or operated by the permittee, but do not have storm drain inlets or discharge directly to surface water. Storm drain inlet labeling is another requirement that was carried over from previous iterations of the permit. Each inlet needs to have appropriate labeling to indicate that it drains to a water body. If the inlet doesn't have permanent wording cast into the structure, like the photo on the bottom shows, please attach a button like the one above to the inlet or use a stencil to paint a similar message. Something new in the 2025 permit is that all storm drain inlets on your property must be retrofitted by the end of this permit cycle, December 31st, 2029. You do not need to replace every inlet. It is perfectly acceptable to use a bolt-on plate across the curb opening of the structure to bring old-style structures into compliance, like you see in the top right picture. Keep in mind that if you are installing a new storm drain, you must use an inlet structure that complies with the NJDOT design standard and grate spacing in Attachment B from the permit. Another new condition is for all new storm drain installations to include a catch basin or other BMP designed for solid collection directly below the inlet or downstream of the new storm drain inlet prior to discharge to surface water. Storm drains installed on bridges and culverts are exempt from this requirement. This permit condition was carried over from previous permit iterations. The Stormwater Program Coordinator must ensure that staff properly apply herbicides. This means not applying herbicides on or adjacent to storm drain inlets or on steep slopes. Herbicides must only be applied in areas where it's unsafe to mow near a structure and only sprayed within a 2-foot radius around the structure. Also, only apply herbicides along curb lines, highway medians, and unobstructed shoulders that contain unwanted vegetation to keep herbicides from being washed into waterways and to minimize erosion and destabilization of steep banks. This permit condition was carried over from the previous permit iterations with a slight name change. Road salt contributes to increased salinity in freshwater bodies, causing degradation of the habitat necessary to support aquatic life, such as trout. This requirement is aimed at cleaning up leftover salt piles that are sometimes deposited when the driver starts up or stops the spreader. Salt piles must be cleaned up within 72 hours of the storm as conditions allow. This condition was also carried over from previous permit iterations with a slight name change. Grass, leaves, and tree trimmings that find their way into the MS4 have a potential to clog the conveyance and increase nutrients and total suspended solids, or TSS levels, in the receiving waters, which may result in harmful algae blooms. This requirement is intended to ensure appropriate management of materials that are generated by your staff when mowing, trimming trees, and wood chipping on highway agency properties. Permittees must ensure that nobody is intentionally blowing grass or leaves into the street, down the storm drain, or into ditches. This is a new condition aimed at controlling the unnecessary removal of trees on highway agency properties to prevent erosion and to promote stormwater infiltration. These requirements were made consistent with the No Net Loss Compensatory Reforestation Act. First, let's talk about the exemptions, since there are so many. If a tree is a hazard, you may remove it. It is fine to remove hazard trees without replacing them. These include any trees that are diseased, infested by insects, dead, or dying. Also, go ahead and remove trees that obstruct traffic signs, pedestrian walkways, or safe passage of vehicles. If you have a concern about the condition of a tree or an arborist declares that it is a threat, those are fine to remove more. The only time this permit condition comes into play is when you're removing perfectly healthy trees from highway agency property. These details are in the permit. Depending on the size of the healthy trees that are removed, you will replace it with one or more trees. It's a little stricter for street trees, which are those trees planted along the sidewalk, in a median, or along a public roadway. Removed trees are required to be replaced within 1 year of removal. This is a new permit condition. Roadside erosion can cause sedimentation of receiving waters and stormwater infrastructure and can pose a public safety concern. We have received complaints about ongoing roadside erosion in several areas. In fact, the picture on the slide is not a stock photo, it is from one of our enforcement officers who is investigating an erosion complaint. This is a good example of why we have this condition in the permit. Erosion checks can be done while performing other stormwater inspections. If problems are identified, the department allows 3 months to address it, unless another time frame is authorized. This permit condition was carried over from previous permit iterations. The permittee must ensure that refuse containers and dumpsters that are outdoors or exposed to stormwater are managed as follows. They must always be covered with a tarp, lid, or under a permanent structure to prevent the contact of waste materials with stormwater, unless actively being filled or emptied. And they must be leak-proof to prevent the discharge of leachate from the contents of the container. Temporary demolition containers, for example, rubble, construction waste, and wood waste, or containers that hold large, bulky items such as furniture, do not need to be leak-proof as long as they do not contain protrusible waste. Litter receptacles and refuse containers at industrial facilities authorized to discharge stormwater under a valid NJPDES permit do not fall under this permit condition. Please stand by while I hand control over to Louisa.
Okay, Louisa taking the driver's seat here. So let us continue with stormwater outfall inspections and maintenance. This condition has been modified for clarity from the last permit iteration. Each of your outfalls must be inspected at least once every 5 years, with a minimum of 20% of the total number of outfalls inspected each year. Inspect newly identified outfalls within 30 days of discovery. For condition, visually inspect outfalls for overall condition, structural integrity, proper function, damaged or missing components, and accumulation of trash and debris. Document when cleaning, maintenance, and repairs are necessary. Remove trash and debris within 30 days of discovery. All reports of compromised structural integrity must be investigated within 30 days, and repairs completed within 30 days of discovery unless a longer schedule is approved by the department. Submit the outfall inspection form with the annual report. For stream scouring, visually inspect for erosion around the outfall and undermining of the outfall. Document when repairs and stabilization are needed. All reports of stream scouring must be investigated within 30 days, and confirmed cases need to be remediated within 12 months of discovery unless a longer schedule is approved by the department. Submit the stream scouring investigation form with the annual report. For illicit discharges, visually inspect for dry weather flow 72 hours after a rain event. The presence of sanitary waste material, turbid or colored water, or discharges with a noticeable odor. All reports of illicit discharges must be investigated within 30 days, and confirmed cases need to be remediated within 12 months of discovery. Submit the illicit connection inspection report form with the annual report. This condition has been modified for clarity from the last permit iteration. Storm drain inlets. The storm drain inlet is the top grate and vertical curbside opening that are visible on the surface. Inspect all storm drain inlets once per year. Storm drain inlet inspections can be done with a simple drive-by visual check, with cleaning and removal of sediment, trash, and other debris from the surface where needed. Catch basins. The catch basin is the sump chamber below the surface, typically under the storm drain inlet. The inspection frequency for catch basins varies depending on how many you have. If there are less than 2,500 catch basins, they must all be inspected once per year. If there are more than 2,500 catch basins, inspect a minimum of 20% of the total, or 2,500 per year, whichever is greater, on a rotation so that all catch basins are inspected at least once every 5 years at approximately the same frequency. Catch basin inspections must be done by looking inside the grate and hood of the inlet to see if cleaning is needed and to determine what equipment and staff will be needed to remove any sediment, trash, and other debris from the catch basin. MS4 conveyance inspection and cleaning. This is a newly defined condition aimed at conveyance systems such as pipes, man-made ditches, swales, etc. These must be inspected regularly and cleaned and maintained as needed to ensure proper function. Permittees must establish what conditions warrant cleaning and maintenance, as well as create an inspection schedule that is tailored to your system and resources. Though we didn't specifically list conveyance features, it has always been required to maintain all the stormwater facilities you own or operate, so you may already have a log of your conveyance systems. This is a new condition that serves as a sort of catch-all since it refers to whatever stormwater facilities you have that are not covered in any other permit condition. The permit includes specific requirements for storm drain inlets, catch basins, outfalls, and conveyance systems, which make up most of the stormwater infrastructure. This requirement is to cover any components that are not listed, such as stormwater management basins and manufactured treatment devices. Your program and SP3 must define the conditions that warrant cleaning and maintenance to ensure proper function. Follow the approved maintenance plans, or if plans don't exist, you can create one by following the department's Best Management Practice Manual or other maintenance guidance. If there is no approved plan or the feature in question is not listed in the department guidance, conduct inspections at least 4 times each year and after each rainstorm exceeding 1 inch of total rainfall. If stormwater facilities are found to not be functioning properly, maintenance and repairs need to be completed as soon as possible, but no later than 90 days from discovery. Please refer to the department's BMP manual for guidance on this maintenance. If you need help, contact your MS4 case manager, who can put you in touch with our stormwater engineering group for assistance. The permittee is responsible for making sure that operations are being conducted in compliance with the MS4 permit at all maintenance yards and ancillary operations, and ensuring that all required BMPs are being implemented. The maintenance yard is your primary maintenance and storage yard. Ancillary operations may include fleet or maintenance shops with outdoor storage areas, impound yards, permanent and mobile fueling locations, salt and sand storage locations, snow disposal areas, recycling drop-off locations, etc. Bulk liquids. This is a new condition to the Highway Agency permit. Maintenance yards often store bulk liquids like fuel oil and liquid de-icers in above-ground tanks. Be sure to protect these tanks by surrounding them with a secondary containment barrier, such as a spill containment dike. Fueling operations. During bulk fueling operations, be sure to use drip pans below hose and pipe connections and block the nearby storm drains. Don't delay repairs or replacement of broken fueling equipment. Discharge from secondary containment. When you empty the stormwater from the collection area surrounding the tank, be sure to dispose of it properly. If you have determined that it's clean, you can just open the valve and let the stormwater flow out. If it appears contaminated, or if you are not sure, haul it off-site for proper disposal. If the contents inside the tank are clear, you may not be able to determine if any got mixed into the stormwater, so assume it is contaminated and haul it off-site for disposal. Vehicle, equipment, maintenance, and repair. Perform these activities indoors whenever possible. If you must work outdoors, use portable tents and drip pans and work in areas far from storm drains or block storm drain inlets. Wash wastewater containment. Wash wastewater tanks need to be certified each year by a New Jersey licensed engineer. Underground tanks and pipes must be checked for leaks every 3 years, and the visible portions should be checked before every use. Check the capacity and pump out the wastewater prior to reaching 95% tank capacity, stopping use immediately if repairs are needed. Report spills immediately to the NJDEP hotline and properly dispose of pump out water and clean out sediment. Salt and other granular de-icing materials. These materials must be stored in a permanent structure and in a way that minimizes exposure to rain, snow, and stormwater runoff. If you don't have a door on the structure, that's okay, but be sure to keep the materials from overflowing beyond the protection of the storage structure. Sweep up any tracked or spilled materials after loading and unloading. Keep in mind that there is a definition of permanent structure in the permit. Aggregate material, wood chips, and finished leaf compost. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm sewer inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use 3-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, hay bales, sandbags, and/or grading to minimize stormwater run-on and runoff. If you do composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing of wood waste or yard trimmings, you'll need an industrial stormwater permit for these activities. Finished materials may be stored indefinitely on site. There are specific BMPs that must be implemented at each maintenance yard and ancillary operation as follows. Site inspections. Usually, the Public Works Supervisor or designee will inspect each yard, noting the conditions and ensuring that any necessary improvements are addressed and documented. Any time when conditions are observed to be out of compliance, correct them promptly. Don't wait for the next monthly inspection to report them and act on addressing the non-compliant conditions. Inventory list. Keep a list of all materials and machinery that are exposed to stormwater, since they are potential sources of pollutants. Container labels and storage. Maintain the readability of container labels for easy identification of the contents. Spill kits. Keep a spill kit near any liquid transfer areas and make sure it's protected from the elements. Be sure to use only dry absorbent materials for cleaning up spills. For example, kitty litter or sawdust, and sweep it up for proper disposal afterwards. Construction and demolition waste, wood waste, and yard trimmings. Store these materials at least 50 feet from surface water bodies, storm sewer inlets, ditches, and other stormwater conveyance channels. Use 3-sided storage bays, dikes, berms, hay bales, sandbags, and/or grading to minimize stormwater run-on and runoff. If you do composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size reducing of wood waste or yard trimmings, you'll need an industrial stormwater permit for these activities. Materials may not be stored longer than 6 months, or you would need to apply for a solid waste permit. Cold patch asphalt. This material must be stored indoors or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material and contained to prevent materials from contaminating the stormwater. Street sweepings and storm sewer cleanouts. This is a new condition to the highway agency permit. Keep these materials in a leak-proof container or stored on an impervious surface and covered with a waterproof material that contained to prevent materials from contaminating the stormwater. Materials may not be stored longer than 6 months, or you would need to apply for a solid waste permit. Scrap tires. This is a new condition to the highway agency permit. Tires must be stored in a covered container or enclosure to prevent exposure to stormwater. Inoperable vehicles or equipment. This is a new condition to the highway agency permit. Use tents, covers, and drip pans under leaking vehicles and check them during monthly site inspections. As we briefly mentioned in a previous slide, storage of any finished leaf compost is still covered under the Highway Agency permit. However, all composting, chipping, grinding, screening, or size-reducing activities, even if it is just once a year, are not covered under this permit and will require a separate industrial stormwater permit. We have issued a new wood waste recycling and leaf composting general permit, effective as of January 1st. That should be adequate to cover these activities for most permittees. If you are performing any of these activities on your property, please reach out to us so that we can determine if your facility is eligible for coverage under the WRC permit or if it requires an individual industrial stormwater permit. The Stormwater Program Coordinator is responsible to make sure staff who support the Stormwater Program receive training at the appropriate intervals. They must also make sure the training records are kept to demonstrate compliance with the training requirements. We will go through each type of training requirements in the next few slides. This is a new permit condition. We developed this training to make sure that the permit is interpreted and implemented correctly and consistently throughout the state. All SPCs are required to attend this training once every permit cycle, about every 5 years. During training sessions, we will be monitoring attendance and keeping records to make sure the SPC for every highway agency has been trained. If SPCs change jobs or retire, someone at the highway agency needs to let us know who the new SPC is within 30 days. The new SPC must attend the next available session, and we suggest they watch the recorded training session posted on the MS4 website to hold them over. The SPC is responsible for conducting or coordinating annual training for their staff, including contractors, on stormwater-related job duties. New staff must receive training within 3 months of commencement of duties, then annually after that. Not everyone needs to be trained on every topic. Just make sure the people who are doing the work related to the topic are getting the appropriate training. The only topic that applies to everyone is a review of the most current SP3. You might not have a training department, so a discussion of these topics should be conducted each year, led by the most knowledgeable person you have on that topic. This can be done in a group setting or one-on-one, in the field, in the office, or on the computer. The SPC is responsible for ensuring that all required training is held and all appropriate records are kept in accordance with the permit. The department has worked with the New Jersey Municipal Environmental Risk Management Fund to develop a set of 4 short videos. Topics include an overview of the MS4 permit, public education and outreach, SP3 development, and DPW operations. This is a new requirement. The permittee shall ensure that all individuals, including employees, contractors, or volunteers, who apply de-icing and anti-icing material on permittee-owned or operated roadways, ramps, and parking areas, complete de-icing and anti-icing material application training at a minimum of once per year. This training should stress the importance of using the smallest amount of material that will make roadways safe and passable. Program managers should receive additional training on effective winter storm management, winter materials inventory management, the properties of salt, and other winter de-icing materials. The SPC must ensure that those engineers who review and approve designs for major development projects on behalf of the highway agency attend the department's stormwater management design review training, which we call SWMDR. The purpose of the training is to ensure that projects are designed in accordance with the rules, so that once a project has been constructed, there is minimal impact on stormwater quality and runoff quantity or flooding. This is a technical course which will cover the most current stormwater management rules and the department's BMP manual. This course is approximately 12 hours in length, broken up over 4 half-days, and is required every 5 years. Additional training may be required if there is an amendment to the stormwater management rule. Training must be done within 12 months of adoption of any amendments. Rule amendment training sessions will be announced by the department on our website and via email to all SPCs and to engineers who have attended previous SWMDR courses. If you have attended SWMDR and your email address changes, please let us know. The department has a list of past course attendees and certification dates, so you can check the status of your engineer. If you have already been operating under the highway agency permit, you should have already mapped most of these items. Permittees must submit the MS4 infrastructure map electronically to the department by January 1, 2028. Electronically does not mean a PDF sent via email. Rather, it means submitting georeferenced shapefiles, geodatabases, or AutoCAD files. The items highlighted in yellow are proposed new mapping requirements in the 2025 permit renewal. You may have already captured them, so would just need to enhance your map or upgrade the components of the map to indicate the location of manholes, stormwater conveyances, including the type and the direction of the flow, pump stations, groundwater discharge points, for example, at an infiltration basin, and the location and type of interconnections to other storm sewer systems. Items highlighted in blue are modified from the previous permit. What happened? Okay, sorry about that. Items highlighted in blue are modified from the previous permit. All storm drain inlets, not just those after EDPA, including the associated attributes. You already mapped stormwater management basins, subsurface infiltration detention systems, MTDs, and GI. These will be moved into the new Stormwater Management Measures feature class with the associated type attribute. The infrastructure map must be reviewed annually or more frequently as necessary and updated to include the location or attributes of any new or newly identified MS4 infrastructure. If the DEP mapping tool is used, data submittal is automatic when you capture the points and attributes. If you do not use the department's tool, that's fine. Just upload the files through NJDEP online in one of the electronic formats we just mentioned. This map must also be posted on your dedicated stormwater webpage or DEP-approved alternate webpage when it is complete. PDF format is not an acceptable format for electronic submission, but that format works great for website posting. There are many water quality impairments and resulting total maximum daily loads, also known as TMDLs, that affect water in every town across the state. And in case you are not familiar with TMDLs, they are reports that are developed for streams, lakes, or other surface waters that have violations of their water quality standards. A TMDL is required to be developed to identify how to improve the water quality for the specific pollutants that are in violation in that water body, such as phosphorus, suspended solids, or fecal coliform. Some of these violations or impairments affect fish and aquatic biota, drinking water intakes that supply the water we drink, and rivers and coastal waters where many of us swim. Every summer, more and more lakes are found to have harmful algal blooms, aka HAB, as a result of poor water quality. Some of these waters have no other discharges into them other than stormwater runoff. The department is requiring that stormwater permittees develop watershed improvement plans, WIPs, to identify water quality and quantity problems affecting their waters and determine what improvement can be made to reduce their contribution. The highway agency permit will require permittees to communicate and collaborate with their surrounding municipalities to reduce the highway agency's resource needs and ensure a more coordinated approach is taken. The WIPs may also be developed on a regional basis among towns, managed by a watershed group, a regional authority, etc. We do recognize that some sources of pollution and flooding are beyond your jurisdiction, such as farmland, municipal, or other highway agency properties, but this exercise will help identify those sources. Here you can see a map depicting the TMDLs and impairments and waters across New Jersey. Areas with water quality impairments for which TMDLs have been developed are represented in yellow. Areas with water quality impairments, but no TMDLs have been developed, yet are represented in blue. And since both these layers are transparent, the green portions of the map represent areas where both a TMDL and an impairment are present. You can see that at least a portion of every town in the state has an impairment, a TMDL, or more often than not, both. Here is an overview of the Watershed Improvement Plan requirements. Each of these phases will be submitted via NJDEP Online. The department recognizes that development of the WIP is a significant undertaking, so we will be available for guidance throughout the process. The development of the plan is divided up into 3 phases. Phase 1, due by January 1, 2028. The goal of this first phase is to inventory all stormwater-related information, which will then be used to inform what is likely contributing to the water quality and quantity problems, and where improvements could be implemented, which then leads us into Phase 2. Phase 2, due by January 1, 2029. The goal of this next phase is to evaluate the information that was gathered in Phase 1 to determine what potential improvement projects can be implemented for both quality and quantity concerns. Phase 3, due by December 1, 2029. The goal of this last phase is to select which of the potential quality and quantity improvement projects from Phase 2 you will implement and on what schedule. Phase 1 is to prepare, submit, and post the watershed inventory report by January 1, 2028. This will include an electronic map of the items listed on this slide. Go ahead and take a moment to read these items. The items with an asterisk represent the GIS layers that the department has available to the public. These layers are updated on different schedules throughout the year. You should combine your data with the department's data to create a complete picture of the discharges to segments of streams with specific impairments and TMDLs. It will be important for those preparing this phase of the plan to be familiar with the topography of the highway agency properties. As part of the department's effort to continually provide guidance and resources to assist permittees with permit compliance, we have created an interactive web-based tool called NJWET, short for the New Jersey Watershed Evaluation Tool. This web-based tool was created with a wide variety of users in mind and will ultimately assist our permittees in the creation and implementation of their watershed improvement plans. The department has always had stormwater-related data available like TMDLs, surface water quality classifications, and HUC 14s. However, before this tool, users would need to download the entire dataset and filter through for their specific details. We wanted to find a simpler way for our permittees to view and download permittee-specific data related to their surface water quality. The tool is broken up into 4 tabs. The Home tab features an interactive dashboard with every data set available from the department related to stormwater. The next 3 tabs will feature a grouping of stormwater-related data that includes TMDLs and impairments, MS4 infrastructure, and impervious surfaces, all of which are required as part of the WIP Phase 1 mapping inventory. In each one of these tabs, there are widgets designed to search for each municipality, so you can clip data sets to municipal boundaries, export the data, share via QR code, and create PDF maps of your own using the print function. The link can be found at the top of this slide to access this new tool. The Watershed Assessment Report, which is Phase 2, is due by January 1, 2029, which is 1 year after the watershed inventory deadline. The permittee shall conduct an initial Phase 2 public information session at the start of the Watershed Assessment Report phase. This report will be created by using the mapping from Phase 1 to create an assessment of potential water quality and quantity improvement BMPs to be implemented at all permittee-owned or operated maintenance yards, ancillary operations, and rest areas by subwatershed and parameter. The report will also need to include an estimate of the reduction of pollutants, a summary of feedback from public sessions, an estimate of funding needs, a tentative implementation schedule, and a plan to implement new BMPs for future projects regarding any linear projects such as roadways and ramps. Hosting stakeholder sessions is an important and required step since these projects may involve tax dollars, disruption of roads, or use of public property, and many of the interested groups may have observational stormwater information. The permittee shall post the watershed assessment report on its dedicated stormwater webpage and announce a 60-day public comment period, as well as submit the watershed assessment report to the department via the NJDEP online stormwater document submittal service by EDPA plus 48 months. The permittee shall conduct a final Phase 2 public information session no more than 45 days after the start of the 60-day commencement period. The public information sessions can be set up collaboratively with any cooperative or regional WIP that is formed for the area. The final phase, which is the Watershed Improvement Plan report, is due by December 1, 2029. This report shall include a summary of proposed project locations, comments received from public information sessions, annual cost analysis for each project, coordination with other regulatory programs, final implementation schedule, schedule of public information sessions, and anticipated challenges beyond the jurisdiction of the permittee. The Watershed Improvement Plan shall be updated when necessary based on the biennial review of revisions to the impairments of the permittee's water bodies based on the department's integrated report and newly adopted TMDLs. The department recognizes that there will be broad differences in the scope of work that different highway agencies will have to do for their WIPs, given the variety of properties. We will work with each permittee to help identify what can be done and will provide a WIP report template for you to follow. The department will notify you if there are additional permit requirements that you need to adopt. This does not happen often. Such cases would result in minor modifications to this master general permit and would require the permittee to meet either numeric effluent limitations or implement new or enhanced best management practices. For optional measures, you are allowed to adopt and enforce other measures to your stormwater program that exceed the requirements in the permit. Or you may have a problem that is unique to your area that relates to stormwater that you want to address. When DEP or EPA staff audit your highway agency complex or conduct a site inspection, they will be looking at your records to demonstrate compliance with each permit condition. The permittee must ensure that these records are ready upon request. Be sure to keep copies of records or logs, inspections, repairs, and investigations related to permit compliance for at least 5 years. Every year between January 1st and May 1st, report on the previous calendar year by accessing DEP Online to submit the annual report. You must attach copies of your outfall inspection forms, stream scouring investigation record-keeping forms, and illicit connection inspection report forms, if applicable. If this is your first time submitting an annual report and would like to see previous year's submissions, just contact your MS4 county case manager and they will provide whatever reports you need. Several conditions that were once included in permit attachments have now been added to the body of the permit, leaving only 2 remaining attachments in the renewal permit. Those were the former Attachment A, Measurable Goals and Implementation Schedule, and the former Attachment E, BMPs for maintenance yards and other ancillary operations. Former Attachment D, the Major Development Stormwater Summary, will now be posted on our webpage and permittees will be required to attach it to their annual report. Attachment A is now the list of activities to choose from to satisfy the public education and outreach condition each year. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we consolidated the choices, and instead of 4 categories, we now have 3. and we simplified the point system so each activity is worth 3 points. We have removed the possibility of earning points for having a dedicated stormwater webpage, since that is now a permit requirement. Attachment B is now the set of design standards for storm drain inlets. These are the items that you can expect to submit to the department initially and after any updates to reflect changes to your stormwater program. Please take a moment to read over this slide. That brings us to the end of today's presentation. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending. If questions or comments arise after today, you can communicate those to us via email to the address listed here on the slide. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
So we can open up if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Or if you don't have a question and want to look through the pre-draft a little bit more and submit those questions, again, like Louisa said, you can send those to that web address on the screen there. Sure. All right, well, I guess we don't have any questions. Again, if when you're reviewing the pre-draft and you have comments, again, it's an informal comment period. But those comments, we ask that they be sent to us by July 20th. Those can be emailed in, and then, we'll take those comments and, address what we can in the draft. And then we'll post the draft and open that up for formal comment period, followed by the issuance of the final permit, hopefully, in November. All right, so if no one else has any questions, I guess we'll wrap that up here. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing what comments you have and working with you in the future. All right, thank you.